Hi guys, welcome to the Fortress of Solitude. This video is about understanding your grade, what are the possible mistakes that you're making and how to move forward from that. Okay, now at a time like this, at the time of filming, this is Christmas, you've got a couple of weeks to focus on a few things before you get back to your lessons and things. So what do you need to do to make the best use of the time? It's not just about Christmas. Even after Christmas, whenever, it's good to know what your grade is telling you about what you need to focus on. Bear in mind, like what I'll be talking about, it is going to be a lot of generalization. I don't know you specifically. There's going to be a lot of scenarios that are very unique to individual people. So I don't mean to generalize everyone into categories, but from my point of view, the grades do say something about what you might be doing right, what you might be doing wrong. And in that case, all I'm trying to do is maybe give you a little bit of guidance. So if you are finding yourself in the position of, you've got this time, Christmas, perhaps another holiday, whatever, if you do have some time, or if you are wondering what it is you need to focus on, I think we can use your grade as an indicator to say what those things might be. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out, well, what are you doing wrong? If you're trying to figure out what do I do then to move forward from where I am, this is just my version of some guidance. Okay, I think we can use that grade to try and get an insight as to what could be going wrong and what you then need to do to fix that and start moving forward. Okay, so let's get into that discussion. More likely than not, you've been assessed. So your grade that you have, that might have been come to because you have done some tests, and those tests would have been according to your exam or past exam papers for your exam board. Okay, whatever your exam board, in the UK, there's a framework for the marks that are available in each test. So those are called the assessment objectives. So bear with me here. We're going to discuss a little bit about the specification, the assessment objectives. We will get to what you need to do, but it's very important to understand like what's the logic that I've been following for the guidance that I'm about to give you. Okay. So and the tests have been composed of past exam questions, most likely. Okay. Now those exam questions have been made with the assessment objectives. So those exam questions that you're doing as practice, as tests, whatever the exam board, those questions have been constructed with the backdrop of the assessment objectives. So if you have a look at the assessment objectives, there's three of them, three main ones: AO1, AO2, and AO3, each increasing in difficulty as you go up. Now, assessment objective 1 is primarily about knowing things. Okay, assessment objective 2 is moving on to application and analysis, and assessment objective 3 is about analysis and evaluation. Okay, so but long story short, basic skills, more advanced skills, and the highest level of skills. Now, in an exam paper, the level of marks that you get relates to how much of those marks that you get. So if you're not able to get many marks, it's most likely that you're missing out on AO3, AO2, and getting some marks at AO1. Okay? If you're getting C's and D's, what that means is you're primarily getting a lot of marks at the basic level, and then you're able to get some marks at the AO2 level, but not all, and again, largely missing out on AO3 marks. And if you're getting the highest grade, then what that means is you're getting the AO1 and AO2 marks, but perhaps missing out on the hardest level or highest level marks, which is the AO3. So this is an assumption that I'm making. Obviously, there's going to be some situations where it's not as clean cut as that, but I think in most cases, the grade that you get will follow this pattern. Okay, so this is what we're going to use then. Okay, so what your grade is trying to tell you is which marks you are missing out on. And that means your grade is telling you what you need to work on. It's not as straightforward as A's and B's excellent, E's and U's bad. It's not that straightforward. It's more nuanced than that. Okay, so if you're getting E's and U's, there's a specific thing you need to do to improve. And if you're getting A's and B's and want to move on to A star, there's a specific thing that you have to do as well. And your grade is trying to tell you that. Okay, so let's get into it then. What do the different grades therefore mean? What is our grade telling us about what we're doing wrong and what we therefore need to fix? This comes to learning activities. So in order to understand the actual advice, which is coming up later, and trust me, I'm not trying to prolong this any more than it needs to be, but in order to understand what we can do in order to fix our grade or improve upon our grade, we need to understand that there are different types of activities that we can do in biology. Okay? Biology is not just studying biology. There's a number of different activities that you can do that help towards different things. Okay, so I'm going to take you through step by step in terms of what those activities are. So in the beginning part, obviously you have the reading, you're exposing yourself to the knowledge. It's a lot of absorbing of information. Okay, but it's not just as simple as that, not just as simple as reading it and taking it in. It's actually processing it. It's actually assimilating it. Okay, like when you eat food, your job's not done just by eating it. Okay. Or just by ingesting it. Actually, the real work is happening in the digestive system, absorbing those nutrients and, assimilating them, using them to build up your own energy stores, etc. So in the same way, simply looking at the textbook doesn't really count as, a job done. So our first level is gaining knowledge and understanding. Okay, so that is things like reading the textbook. It's like making notes, preparing your flashcards, not just doing those things, but how you do it. Like how much effort and active work are you actually putting into that? If it's just copying out of the textbook, then you can see how that doesn't really help you a lot. But if you're trying to reformat that information, put it in your own words, organize it, that's you assimilating it. Okay, but that's the basic level, right? There's all that stuff you do to assimilate. Another group of activities is the things that we do to start to apply the knowledge. Okay, so again, that's us thinking about what we have just absorbed and assimilated. It's us then using that. So this is our AO2 that we work on. So this is usually things like answering questions, answering multiple choice questions, or maybe your teacher's asking you questions, making you think about what you're doing. Any kind of activity, worksheets, exam questions are a big one. Okay, so any activities where you're forcing yourself to use the information which you've assimilated. So there's the assimilation stage, there's the using stage, and then there's the next stage where you're doing a lot of advanced work with that. So here we're talking about applying your knowledge to practicals, applying your knowledge to analyzing data. So how data can be used to kind of confirm, consolidate, link up with ideas that you've done in biology or you've looked at in biology. So that data analysis part is important too. Now what your grade tells you is which of those you need to work on. So let's get into it. Now according to the grade that you're working at, according to the assessment so far, you might not agree with that, so you can use your own judgment here. Whatever you think applies to you, go with that. But in my experience, the grades that you get in tests, trust those things, and then act on them, and then when you achieve the next level, then start working on the next priority. Okay, so right, so here we go then. If you are currently in this situation, E/U, what do you need to work on? Well, an E/U is telling you that what you need to do. So you're missing out on the highest, the AO3 marks. You're missing out on the AO3 marks. You're missing out on a lot of AO2 marks. You're getting some marks at the AO1 level, but this is where that's where you're getting your marks, and you need to move on from there. My advice to you in this situation, if you've got a limited time, or like if you want to prioritize on something, I'm not saying don't do the other things. I'm saying priorities always help. So your priority should be on understanding. Okay, it's on understanding the biology, not so much the application yet, because you need to get it first. You need to be confident about that, not that those concepts and that content. You need to be confident of your command over that stuff before you can then begin to apply it. And then after you've applied it, then you can start thinking about analyzing, evaluating, and kind of doing higher level stuff with it. So we need to focus on this. And I'm not saying that, you know, that means that the A*/A is out of the question. It just means that in order to begin that journey towards those grades, you need to start here. Okay, so assimilation, understanding, what are the activities then that help us with that? As I've said, you need to focus on making your resources. I wouldn't spend too much time, especially in the second year, I wouldn't spend too much time just working on making notes, because that might be too much content to go through. But what I'm saying is, work on your understanding, map the topic out, make maps, make mind maps, things like that. Like, try and get all the content on a sheet of A4 or a sheet of A3. Let that map then tell you, once you've got all those topics in front of you, think about the concepts that you know you're not fully understanding. Okay, how do you work on understanding? Understanding means you're putting all the facts into a story, so you know how the facts all connect together. All right, so if you think of a house that's made of bricks, okay, you can't just pile the bricks together and end up with a fully functional house. Okay, those bricks have to be connected, joined together, stuck together, cemented together before we can get walls, before we can get the whole structure. Okay, so at the E/U level, I think a lot of things, the things that people are doing wrong at this level is they're seeing biology as a kind of content only subject. It's not so much just the facts. I think there's an over focusing on the facts. What you need to do at this level is you need to get through the facts to the other side, which is what is the stuff that's connecting all the points together. So not only knowing the steps of protein synthesis, transcription, translation, all that stuff, not only knowing what happens, why it happens. Okay, understanding that enzymes are carrying out all the steps, understanding that the reason why the bases are aligning is because of hydrogen bonding with complementary base pairing. So it's understanding why all the stuff is happening, not only what is happening. Okay, so anything that allows you to put that story together, so focus on that. If that means you got to write stuff out, then write stuff out, but don't write anything out that doesn't make full sense to you. Don't write anything out that you don't know why that's happening. Don't put anything on paper that's just a fact. Facts in context, facts as events in a story, that helps. Okay, so you want to get yourself to a point where you can, whatever you've understood, you can explain it to someone else. Okay, now another thing at this stage or at this level is what I would really ask people to reflect on is how much of the stuff, like how much time are you giving what you need to give. Okay, now again, no judgments from me here, but this is a question that you need to ask yourself. How much time are you giving the subject? How much time are you giving yourself to do all the stuff? Like, maybe on some level you know that you've got to make sense of it, but maybe because of time pressures or whatever, or the time that you're finding to do it, maybe you can only just make notes, or maybe you can just give the chapter a quick read. like maybe that's all you're able to do before the next lesson comes, well then that's going to be why then you're at this level, because maybe we're not able to give it enough time, right? Because to make sense of something as hard as biology, it takes time. You've got to sit with it, you got to figure things out. Sometimes you got to do extra research because the book's not going to make full sense. Maybe your notes don't make full sense from the lesson. So you got to do extra research, and all of that stuff goes into building that story, cementing our bricks together. Okay, so if we're not able to give it that time, that might be something that you need to look at. Okay, again, there can be a number of reasons why you might not be able to find the time. Okay, but the fact is that if time is an issue, you're going to have to find a way to give the subject the time it needs, right? Give yourself the time you need to make sense of it. Okay, all right, so we need to make sense of the subject, we need to find the time to do it. Last thing, guys, motivation. All right, because one of the reasons why you might not be finding the time to do it is maybe you're giving too much, maybe you're giving a lot of time to other subjects, not finding the time to do biology. Okay, or, you know, life is hard. Maybe there are situations that just mean, like, you know, biology, doing well in biology isn't your priority right now. That might be the case too. But sometimes motivation is something that is the factor that means the difference between doing the work, not doing the work, pushing yourself to go that little bit extra to do the extra stuff that's needed to get to the next grade, and maybe not doing that. So I would always suggest, guys, think about why you need to do well in biology. All right, think about that motivation. What is your why? Find your why. Why are you doing this? Why do you need to do well in biology? Okay, and once you find that why, you got to then keep reminding yourself of why you're doing that, and therefore give yourself that extra little nudge if it's needed to get yourself to do the things that otherwise you might not be motivated to do, or that don't seem that appealing, but it's got to be done. Okay, so it might, yeah, that's what I would suggest. Think about why you're doing things or why you're not doing things. Okay, so you got to think about that. Like, you know, some people it's just, for some people it could be just, you know, they just need to do well because of competition with other people. That's their why. You know, other people, you know, you got to get a grade for a particular course at a particular university, then that's your why. You know, think about where you want to be for 10 years from now. Okay, in order to get there, what do you need to do? Maybe that's your why. You know, maybe you're not happy with your current situation. You want to pull yourself out of that situation. Well, then that's your why. Other people, you know, maybe you want to be respected. Maybe you want to prove some people wrong. Okay, then that's your why. But whatever it is, you have to find it. And if you haven't found it, maybe that's something that's kind of holding you back from kind of really going all out for this thing. Okay. D and C. What this means is potentially, so I mean, according to our system that we're using here, what this would mean is that we're getting a good proportion of the marks. It's just like the thing that's letting us down here is applications. If you're DC, what that's telling you is you're kind of doing a lot of the right things, but what's letting you down is application. So I suspect, generalizing again, and apologies if this is not you, but maybe you've got your notes all in order, you've got a bit of a routine going on, you've got a system, you've got notes, flashcards, you do your homework on time, everything kind of working out fine on the face of it, but for some reason when it comes to the test it's just not clicking, it's just not working out. Well, what is going wrong? And I think at this level it comes down to activeness. Yeah, I think at this level there's quite a bit of complacency. I feel like you know, maybe people tell themselves that as long as I'm doing all the right things, I should be getting the grade, and I don't think it's just about ticking those boxes. I think it's the quality of what you're doing is really important. Okay, so when you're making notes, please ensure that you're not just doing a straightforward information transfer process. Make sure you're focusing on really understanding all the stuff that you're writing. Make sure that that's a story that you're understanding and can tell somebody else. Secondly, maybe you're doing revision, but the quality of it is not quite right. So whereas you're doing your flashcards and you're going through the routines and everything's looking fine, then what's letting you down on the test? Are you really pushing yourself to know everything, or are you kind of telling yourself that you know it? Okay, again, if you watch my video on revision, I go through the difference between kind of the passive way of revising and the proper active way of revising, which is proving to yourself that you know it, not just telling yourself that you know it. But again, that's a separate, larger discussion by itself. Finally, exam questions. Like, I think this could be the most powerful thing, but again, maybe we've got ourselves into kind of a bit of a routine. Like, you're doing the exam questions, answering the questions, what you think is right, marking it, right or wrong, off we go. And again, we need to focus on, like, are we really making the best attempt at that question that we possibly could? And the other thing is, when you're marking, like, this is the fundamental difference between high quality exam question work and kind of very average quality exam question work, is the marking. The marking is the most important part of doing exam questions, because that's where you're learning, right? And I think that too many people give themselves the benefit of the doubt when they're doing the exam questions. So what you need to be doing is actively looking for your mistakes, because it's the mistakes that are going to tell you where you can improve. And if you're kind of giving yourself too much of the benefit of the doubt, every time you kind of give yourself 3 out of 4 where it was actually 2, 3 out of 3 when it was actually 1, you're missing out on opportunities to make an improvement. Okay, so if you're at the CD level, I think you need to hit your exam questions a little bit harder. Okay, first focus on the marking, like, make a more solid attempt, focus on the marking, be active in finding your mistakes. Okay, like, analyze the mark schemes properly. Yeah, don't just give yourself like overall kind of I got it right. No, really think about what you got wrong. Focus on what you got wrong. Okay, finally, volume, right? I think at the CD level, the more questions that you do can be more powerful, because what you're trying to do with these exam questions is not really perfect your exam technique. You're trying to prod and probe and test your understanding, because it's the understanding that's going to lead to the good application. And if the understanding is weak, then you can't apply very well. So what you want to do here is hit yourself with as many different types of exam questions on a topic that you can, because each of those questions will test your understanding in a different kind of way. And as long as you mark your work correctly and use that as an opportunity to fix any misunderstanding that you have, each of these questions will take you a little step forward in understanding a particular concept. And that can be super powerful if you do enough exam questions and if you're kind of testing your understanding from as many different angles as it is possible to do. Okay, so at the CD level, high volume of exam questions, I think, could be very useful. It's just my thought. Okay, again, another thing here, I'm going to come back to this, motivation. I think at the CD level, I think one of the things that can hold people back is a little bit of complacency, because it's not like you're in a very desperate situation of kind of being close to failing or anything like that. But at the same time, maybe you think that, oh yeah, in the next month, in the next 2 months, I'll get there. I'm kind of in a process of improvement and I'll get there. And it might be true that you'll get there, but remember, we don't have a lot of time. And the fact of the matter is that if you're not actively pursuing the next grade, it's not just going to come automatically. Okay, so So the thing is that I think that at this level, there can be a little bit of, well, it will happen eventually, but it might not. And you've got to be very active in that. And you've got to ask yourself then, well, why am I not already at an A? Okay, because it is what you're doing that's giving you the grade that you've got. So you've got to change what you're doing so that you can get a different grade, right? So, as we've said, we've got to be a bit more active. And I would suggest to you, maybe consider your motivation. Like, why are you not going that little bit extra that would mean that you're getting a high grade? Okay? So think about that motivation. Understand that the grade that you need or want is not going to come automatically. You need to really push for it. Okay? I mean, again, at this level, maybe you're not going for an A star, or maybe you're not applying to Cambridge, or maybe you're not applying for medicine. So maybe there's a bit of, well, I don't need an A star, I just hope that I get an A or a B. Well, it is very risky to kind of work towards a particular grade. Like, that's a risky game to play, because things don't always work out. You really have to go all out and get the best grade that you can get. Okay, so that's, and I hope we see the difference between those two things. Yeah, one, you're working towards a specific target, and one, you're going all out to get the best grade that you can get. All right, and I say that way is better. Okay, so understand that, really push yourself to do your absolute best. Don't kind of leave anything in the tank and say, well, I don't need an A star, so it's fine. No, do your best, go all out if you can. Finally, we have B/A, aiming for A star. All right, so what's the issue here? Well, again, in this case, what that grade is telling you is that you're getting the majority of marks at AO1 and AO2, and AO3 is your target, is that thing that you have to attack and fix and find a strategy to deal with. So at this level, I think, content shouldn't be too much of an issue. We know the content, we get the content, more often than not, we're applying it properly. And I think here, we really need to think about the higher level data analysis. We need to work on that. And we need to really kind of refine our exam technique. So at AO3, I think it's about exam technique. It's about making sure, when you get, how can you turn the 3 out of 4s into 4 out of 4? And that's the challenge here. So how do you become a master of the content and a master of exam technique? What we want to do here is, we want to make sure that we are really, so it's kind of the next step from doing exam questions. We're doing exam questions now specifically to work on the exam technique. Now this is we're trying to turn doing an exam into a kind of art form here at this level. So we don't want to just get questions kind of mostly right. We want to be deeply offended if we lose marks. Like, why did that happen? Okay, so we want to understand the whole kind of question mark scheme. We want to understand that on a very deep level, so that when we see a question, we kind of know mostly the kind of answer that is required. So here, what I would suggest, and this might be a little bit unorthodox, I would suggest you try and do maybe fewer exam questions, but A, the right kinds of questions, and B, maybe spend more time working on your answers to questions to really perfect them, and spend a bit more time with the mark scheme question, your answer with the mark scheme, that holy trinity. Okay, those three things, working with them to kind of find out where your strategy, where your approach to answering questions is going wrong, identifying the trends in what are the kinds of things that you're doing wrong on a regular basis, and then every time you do a question, you're trying to address that weakness in your previous attempts. So we want to work on the right kinds of questions. We want to focus on very, very applied questions. Like, if I were you, find the kinds of exam questions that include practicals, that Target those questions that have data analysis. Target those questions that have 6 markers where you need to discuss, where you need to evaluate, where you need to analyze. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself with questions that you find difficult, that highlight your weaknesses, so that you can work on them. Okay? And that might mean that you don't get through as many questions, but I think that activity is going to get more improvement from you, rather than like the standard questions that you might be doing, that you might be getting right, that kind of maybe give you a bit of false confidence. Rather, do those questions that really give you a hard time. Okay, so do those kind of questions. The other thing I would suggest is try to teach other people. Like, you've got yourself into a situation where you know the content really well, but now you need to kind of go from knowing it really well to becoming a master of that content. And one of the ways that I find that is, a sign that someone is really good at the subject is when they can explain things to other people. So any opportunity that you get to explain the biology to someone else, share your knowledge a little bit. Like, take advantage of those things, because not only will you be kind of doing something good for somebody else, but it's going to benefit you as well. Kind of a straightforward one, but what you might want to do is just try and get a head start on what's coming up next. Okay, that at the end of the year it's going to be intense in terms of revision, going over all the content, in terms of doing exam questions. That's going to be intense. So what you want to do for yourself is buy some time. Okay, so we're going to do that by trying to get ahead. So if you know the next topic that's coming up, get a head start on it. Start reading through it. You've already demonstrated a lot of independence in your learning. So now let's use that. Okay, you've built these skills. Let's put them into practice. Get ahead. Start going through that content maybe before the teacher does. And so by the time that the lessons come, you've already got some questions. You only need to fill in the gaps at that point. Okay, get that head start. The last thing is that you have already worked quite hard. If you're at an A or a B, you already worked quite hard. Okay, it's been a long year, it's been a long term. If you're in the second year, it's been a year and a bit. In that case, you've already worked very hard, and you might just want to take a little step back and pat yourself on the back, tell yourself well done, and use the Christmas holidays just to recharge a little bit, so that when we come back on the other side of Christmas, you can go at it again with full effort and more energy. Okay, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're just working all the time until a point where before the exams come, you've kind of maxed out all your effort and you're done. Okay, so you've put a lot of effort in already. If you get an opportunity, such as a half term, such as a Christmas holiday, something like that, and if you're already working at an A or a B level, yes, absolutely don't waste the holidays, but understand that maybe this is an opportunity for you to just take your foot off the gas a little bit, reset your mind, reset your brain a little bit, reacquaint yourself with why you're doing this, reacquaint yourself with your motivations, relax, say hello to your family and friends again, and then use the holidays and opportunities like that for that purpose. So when you do have to go again, you're re-energized, and you kind of built up a store of energy to kind of do the last lap. Okay, guys. Well, that's really all I wanted to say. I hope that this has been useful. A lot of generalizations on the way, I know, and as I said before, not everything I said is going to apply to every single person, but if you find yourself in a position where you don't know what to do, you don't know how to use the time, you don't know what your main priority should be, I hope this has shed some light on that. Alright guys, If you think there's any part of this that I've neglected to talk about, or maybe I haven't considered, please let me know. I like to talk about these kind of things, and I like to get the student perspective, because all I have is the ideas in my head. So it would be really interesting to know what you guys think about what I've said. If there's anything that you think deserves a follow-up conversation. Good luck, guys.